The first stone hits the eastern wall just before dawn. It's not a sound. It's a pressure wave that travels through 5 centuries of baked mud brick, through the soles of your feet, and detonates behind your eyes. On the ramparts, a Naphthan, a fire thrower, stumbles, his prized jar of naphtha sloshing like a nervous stomach. He's a man named Ali, and all he knows is that the heartbeat of his city has just been replaced by a new one. Thump. A low, methodical groan from across the water. Thump. It's the sound of a clock striking an hour that Baghdad never thought would arrive. Below, in the ink-black Tigris, the reflection of 1,000 torches on a newly built pontoon bridge shimmers, an army of ghosts marching upside down, sealing the city's fate from both sides. Ali clutches his sweating jar of liquid fire. His throat is raw from pitch smoke, his prayers are lost in the groaning of siege engines. Down in the mud at the river's bend, a single waterlogged book, its iron chain snapped from a library lectern, has already been claimed by the silt. Its swollen pages are bleeding ink into the current. This book is our first witness. And its weight tells a story the official histories forget. In Baghdad, the capital of the world, knowledge was literally chained down for safekeeping. And tonight, the river is coming to claim every last word. Out there, in the flickering darkness, names are moving like constellations being dragged down to earth. The first is Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis, Khan of the West. He isn't just a commander, he's a deadline given human form. His grandfather gave him a simple order that has taken 7 years to reach this riverbank: pacify the world from the Oxus to Egypt. And if the Caliph of Baghdad, the spiritual leader of Islam, refuses to bow, the city must be erased. Riding at his side is Kitbuka, his most trusted general, a Nestorian Christian commanding a Mongol hammer. Their army is a terrifying mosaic, Armenian and Georgian banners fluttering next to Mongol horsetails, and a silent, disciplined corps of Chinese and Persian engineers, men who can calculate the depth of a wall with nothing but rope, wood, and mathematics. They are a perfectly integrated killing machine. Inside the walls, the machine is broken. The Caliph, al-Musta'sim, is the 37th Abbasid ruler, a man who inherited a title that was once the most powerful on earth. Now, it's a magnificent costume with no emperor inside. He's flanked by 2 opposing forces. One is his vizier, Ibn al-Alqami, a man who has spent weeks whispering caution, diplomacy, and submission into the Caliph's ear. He sees the numbers, he sees the siege engines, and he knows the game is already lost. History will later paint him as a traitor, a Shura'i minister who secretly sold out his Sunni master. The other is the general of the army, Sulayman Shah, a man of pride and fury who screams of honor and the sanctity of these walls. He urges the Caliph to fight, to trust in God, to trust in the 5 centuries of Abbasid glory. While they argue, the librarians of the Great Mustan Syria University check the chains on their books, a defense against petty thieves, utterly useless against the flood that is coming. The city's only real claim to survival is a fragile hope, that its history, its faith, and its walls can somehow add up to immunity. But the clock is ticking. Hulagu's horses are eating the Mesopotamian plains bare. They are calendars with ribs, and they say his army can only wait a few more weeks before the spring floods arrive and turn this entire siege camp into a sea of mud. Submission, or annihilation. The choice must be made. And the mangonels have already started voting. This single, terrifying moment is not an accident. It's the final sentence in a paragraph written years earlier. We have to rewind the tape. The year is 1251. Monk becomes the great Khan in the Mongol capital of Karakoram. One of his first orders is to his brother, Hulagu. The mission: destroy the Nizari Ismaili, the so-called assassins, in their mountain fortresses in Persia. Then, march on Baghdad. The order is explicit: if the Caliph submits, don't harm him. If he resists, obliterate him. For 5 years, Hulagu methodically carries out the first part of his mission. In 1256, the legendary fortress of Alamat falls. This isn't just a military victory, it's a logistical one. An entire army of siege specialists, the best engineers and sappers in the world, is now free. Their next target is already on the map. In late 1257, Hulagu begins his advance. He doesn't lead with cavalry, he leads with letters. His messengers ride ahead, carrying ultimatums like plague samples. Submit. Open your gates. Pay tribute. Dismantle your outer walls. In Baghdad, the Caliph reads the terms and hesitates. He is trapped between his vizier's pleas for pragmatism and his general's calls for glory. He sends back a reply that is a masterpiece of indecision, a little bit of defiance, a little bit of negotiation. It is the worst possible answer. To Hulagu, hesitation is weakness. It is an invitation. He sees a city ruled by a man who cannot make a choice. He sends a final, chilling message: when I lead my army against Baghdad in anger, whether you hide in heaven or in earth, I will bring you down. By January 29, 1258, the trap is sprung. The Mongol army, a force estimated at over 150,000 men, has sealed every road, every path, every dirt track leading to the city. The encirclement is complete. Now, look closer at this army. It is not the barbarian horde of legend. It is a mobile state, an integrated engine of conquest. The lightning-fast steppe cavalry are there to harass, to raid, to break enemy formations in the open field. But the real heart of this force is its international corps of specialists. The Persian and Turkic auxiliaries are the anvil. The Armenian and Georgian contingents, who have their own scores to settle, are there to secure the flanks. And then there is the siege train. 1,000 teams of Chinese engineers, experts in gunpowder and mechanics, work alongside Persian masters of the counterweight trebuchet, the mangonel. They assemble their machines just out of arrow range, their movements disciplined and precise. Behind huge wooden shields called mantlets, they sight the arcs of their stones. Meanwhile, sappers, the military miners, are already crawling towards the walls under the cover of darkness, their spades held in their teeth. They don't just attack the walls, they attack the river. They arrive with prefabricated boat bridges, ready to be assembled. Within days, they stitch the Tigris shut with pontoon ribs, creating highways for their troops to cross at will. They read the city's ancient network of canals and dikes not as a source of life, but as a weapon. They see a city that is fed by the river, but also trapped by it. And Hulagu is watching the river most of all. The river is the key. For centuries, the Abbasid caliphs had built and maintained one of the most sophisticated irrigation systems in the world. It was a network of canals, dikes, and levees that tamed the wild spring floods of the Tigris and turned the desert green. It was the circulatory system of their civilization. But in the last century, that system had been neglected. Levees had crumbled. Canals had silted up. The bureaucracy that managed it had grown corrupt and lazy. And Hulagu's engineers see it. They see the decay. And they turn the city's greatest asset into its greatest liability. Under the cover of night, Mongol demolition teams don't just attack the walls, they attack the levees upstream. They deliberately cut them. A torrent of muddy water pours out, not towards the Mongol camp, but towards the fields on the western side of the city, the very fields where Baghdad's army would need to maneuver. The land turns into a sucking marsh. Horses break their ankles. Foot soldiers get trapped in irrigation ditches that are no longer on any map. The river, the proud spine of Baghdad, is now a tourniquet, cutting off its own circulation. This is the central, brutal truth of this entire siege. This is what the waterlogged book in the Silt is trying to tell us. Empires don't just fall when their armies are defeated. They fall when the very systems they built to sustain them are so badly neglected that they switch sides and start fighting for the enemy. The first week of February. Inside the walls, desperation is setting in. The thud of the mangonels is no longer a surprise, it's the rhythm of their lives. General Sulayman Shah convinces the Caliph to authorize one last, desperate gamble, a full-scale sortie. He will lead the army out from the gates and smash the siege engines, break the encirclement before it strangles them completely. It's a moment of pure, cinematic heroism. The gates swing open. The Abbasid cavalry, clad in mail that glints in the weak winter sun, pours out over the causeways. The drums are beating. Naphtha pots are sloshing. For a moment, it feels like the old Baghdad, the Baghdad of legend, has returned. And then, the orchestra begins again. Hulagu was waiting for this. He knew they would have to try. The mangonels unleash a coordinated barrage, not at the walls, but into the tightly packed ranks of the charging cavalry. The stones don't just kill, they unzip formations. Heavy crossbow bolts, fired from massive siege weapons, nail champions in the middle of their battle cries. And then, Kitbuka's forces, held in reserve, slam into the flanks of the disorganized charge. The sortie is not defeated, it is snapped in half. The retreat is a bloodbath. As the survivors stream back into the city, they bring panic with them. The outworks, the smaller defensive towers outside the main wall, fall in a cascade that no one can stop. The city's will to fight is gone. All that's left is the accounting. Now the letters that arrive with the arrows are different. The tone is no longer a negotiation. It's a verdict. Surrender now, and the lives of the citizens may be spared. Resist for one more hour, and everyone will be a lesson to the world. Inside the palace, the arguments in the Caliph's court become frantic. The vizier, Ibn al-Alqami, now openly begs for surrender. He knows the next stage is a direct assault on the walls, and they don't have the men or the morale to stop it. General Sulayman Shah, his army shattered, can now only boast of titles and ancestry, as if a long lineage can scare gravity itself. The Caliph, a man paralyzed by a choice he should have made a year ago, finally relents. The time for pride is over. On February 10th, the gates open. Caliph al-Musta'sim, accompanied by his sons and a procession of the city's notables, walks out under a flag of truce. His dignity is a thin, fragile blade. Hulagu receives him, at first, with a display of civility. He asks the Caliph to order the city's garrison to lay down their arms and come out. The order is given. The soldiers, disarmed and broken, march out of the city. They are led to the Mongol camp, and there, every last one of them is executed. The massacre has begun. What follows is a week that burns itself into the memory of a civilization. The sack of Baghdad is not a chaotic riot, it is a systematic dismantling. Mongol hordes pour through the now defenseless gates. They move through the mosques, the markets, the hospitals, the palaces. The killing is industrial in its scale. The chroniclers, Javani, Rashid al-Din, Bar Hebrius, men who were there or spoke to those who were, record the devastation. The numbers are debated, but they are staggering. Tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, are killed. But it's not just about killing. It's about sorting. Artisans, craftsmen, scholars, anyone with a valuable skill, is separated from the crowd, tagged for deportation to the Mongol capital or other parts of the Ilkhanate. They are prizes to be collected. The rest are simply numbers to be erased. And then, they come for the libraries. The locks on the doors of the madrasas are smashed. The chains on the books are snapped. Manuscripts representing centuries of thought, in medicine, astronomy, philosophy, poetry, are either piled onto carts to be sent east, or used as fuel, or, most famously, thrown into the river. The legend, which will be told for centuries, is that the Tigris ran black with the ink of dissolving books and red with the blood of slaughtered scholars. It is hyperbole, of course. But it's a legend born from a real trauma, the sight of books, the sacred vessels of their culture, floating downstream alongside the bodies of their neighbors. The great Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, had faded long before this day, but Baghdad was still a city of countless private and public libraries. It was a city whose very identity was bound to the written word. And now, that identity was drowning. Finally, there is the matter of the Caliph. Mongol tradition forbids the spilling of royal blood on the earth. So, al-Musta'sim's end is shrouded in ritual. The most famous account says he was rolled up in a fine Persian carpet, and then trampled to death by horses. Another suggests he was locked away in his treasury and left to starve to death amidst the gold he had refused to spend on his own defense. The method is irrelevant. The result is absolute. The temporal authority of the Abbasid Caliphate, a line that had stretched back 500 years, is shattered. The symbolic center of the Islamic world has been decapitated. But here is a detail that changes everything. The Mongols do not just destroy. They acquire. They are not just killers, they are the most ruthless asset strippers in history. Within a year of the sack, a man named Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, one of the greatest scientists and astronomers of his age, is working under the patronage of Hulagu Khan. He is designing the Maraga Observatory, what will become the most advanced astronomical research center in the world. And what is he using for his research? Carts filled with books and astronomical instruments seized from the libraries of Baghdad. Knowledge was not erased. It was captured, recatalogued, and put to work for a new master. And then, almost as quickly as they arrived, the bulk of the Mongol army disperses. The fury of the assault, the week of terror, it was all driven by a simple, non-negotiable deadline. The spring floods were coming. The pastures were bare. The horse calendar, the ultimate authority on the steppe, said it was time to move. The entire, city-shattering event was, in the end, a masterpiece of project management. A campaign driven by logistics, disguised as pure, apocalyptic rage. So let's read the pattern beneath the smoke and the blood. First, the disease of overconfidence. Baghdad was suffering from a terminal case of prestige. It believed its own legends. Its institutions were hollow, its bureaucracy was a skeleton dressed in silk robes, and its political factions were more interested in fighting each other than the enemy at the gates. Second, the power of an integrated system. Hulagu didn't just bring an army, he brought a coalition. He brought engineers, sappers, allies, and psychological warfare, and he synchronized them all to work towards a single objective against a hard deadline. Third, and most critically, hydrology is destiny. The side that understood and weaponized the river, won. The Tigris had been the source of Baghdad's greatness. But once neglected, it became the moat for its own prison. The turning point was not a single battle. It was the moment the failed sortie collapsed under engine fire, while the pontoon bridges were already sealing the river. It was the moment the court decided to negotiate from a position of absolute exhaustion, instead of a position of strength. The cost was both mythic and brutally arithmetic, a city shattered, a culture gutted, and a story that had defined a world, punctured and sunk, all in 1 week. Now, look in the mirror. You can still see the fingerprints of this disaster on our own world. Knowledge is still a primary target in war. Remember the looting of the Baghdad Museum in 2003, the archives torched in modern conflicts. Culture is always on the hit list. Our own infrastructure, our power grids, our water systems, our communication networks, our political battlefields. Neglect them, and they become weapons that can be turned against us by anyone who knows how to twist the valve. And the race to capture talent, to spare the coder, the engineer, the scientist, is the new face of conquest. Great cities are not immortal. They are contracts that have to be renewed every single day, with maintenance, with unity, and with a clear-eyed view of the threats on the horizon. The Tigris whispers the same lesson today that it did in 1258, if you do not run your systems will eventually run you. We've laid out the evidence for the collapse, the hollow institutions, the brilliant engineering, the weaponized river. But the question of human agency remains. So tell me in the comments, based on the evidence, was the vizier Ibn al-Alqami a pragmatic traitor who tried to save the city from annihilation, or a saboteur who sealed its fate? It's a debate that still rages among historians, and I want to know your verdict. And if you want to understand what happens when a new technology of war meets an old empire, the story of the fall of Constantinople is waiting for you right here. Subscribe, and keep digging with us into the archives of humanity.